Welcome to day 3 of the fall 2024 programming fundamentals with C Sharp. This is Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College, and today we will cover the following items. First thing I wanted to do is go over some housekeeping items. A lot of the students, a lot of students already have a Discord channel. Some it's new for some students, but especially the ones who've had Discord channel for a while. They have different usernames, so I'm going to show you. We need to update the server nickname for this course, just so I know who it is. People send me things, I don't even know who it is. And also, we're going to kind of do a quick review on GitHub Desktop. And just in case, like, somebody needs to move their folder or that, how we can kind of do that, okay? We're going to discuss the local repository directory and make sure that, there might be some instances where you kind of want to see the hidden files and make sure that that's enabled for you. Change the lab name. Okay, yeah, I just want to show you about change the lab name in the Git repository. We kind of did that, but just kind of go review that. And then I want to review assignments and grading, and the kind of the plan for next week. And then I'll send an email to review the current week and everything we've done. After that, I'd like to test our labs from day 2. So what I do on my side is I go ahead and I clone your repositories. Your repositories are private, just for, only you can really view them, you and myself. So I clone your repositories, so that's how I grade your work, right? So, I just went and grabbed one student's repository, and I seen an error in there. So I'm going to kind of show that. It's not going to show which student it is, so, no worries there. But, so if it's yours, I'm not picking on you, and it's just the first one I grabbed, and there's a little error in there, and that's okay. I'll show you how to fix that, and, we'll go from there. And after that, we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to do Chapter 3 overview. It's a PowerPoint presentation. I'll show you a little code demonstration. And then we'll go ahead and complete the written test. And so what I'm wanting to do on that is, instead of me doing it, I want you to go ahead and start it. I want you to go ahead and start it and get through it, and then I'm gonna come back and we'll kind of go through it again. All right. But you can follow this Chapter 3 study guide, and this is in your email, right? So you can follow that. A lot of the answers that are for that test are going to be in here. So you can kind of just search for them, or you could read this. It'll only probably take you 5 minutes to read that. Some of the stuff you might not understand completely, but it's a pretty quick read. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and do. Yesterday we did the first lab assignment, so we're going to go ahead and do the second lab assignment, and we're going to do that together. And actually, I probably should say this, because what I really want to do here is then I want you to go ahead and try to get started on this yourself, the lab assignment number 3. I'll guide you a little bit from the beginning, and then, we'll spend give you a little bit of time during the class to try to work through it. And then, I'll come back and we'll go through it again. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to do is go to GitHub Desktop. And, because I know some people are having problems about where the repository and that is, and it happens to me as well. I put something somewhere and I don't remember where it is, especially if you got a lot of stuff on your computer. It can be kind of confusing, obviously. So one thing you can do here on your current repository, if you come up here and you right click and then show and explore, it's going to show you this is where your repository is. This is where all the files in your repository is. Okay. Now let's just say that so here it's on my desktop. So let's just say, you want to move this. Let's say you put it somewhere very deep in a file system. You want to move it, all right? So let me show you how you can do that. So basically, you kind of really want to close. You want to close this. You want to make sure you close anything that has any references to those files, any reference to the files in this, where the repository is. And basically your repository is always this exact one here, okay? For my case, I'll just go ahead and grab this only. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this, and then we're going to go to a different directory. Okay, so that's that. Let's make sure that this is gone over here. I'm just confusing you guys. All right, it's gone there. So now let's go ahead and open up GitHub Desktop. Now, obviously, if everything's working, you don't need to do this. I just know some people had some problems about where things were. So then if I open up GitHub Desktop now, so it says I can't find this. So, it's already kind of it's already configured here in GitHub Desktop, but it can't find this. So basically what you do is you come in here, and then you can go ahead and change this, and then go locate, go find it, and boom. So that's all you need to do. And then obviously come up here, show and explore, and it's going to show the path to the new folder and where it's at. Okay. So the fact that we're here, let's kind of review a couple things. So there's this Git, and if for some reason you're not seeing this, it's probably because a lot of times by default, it hides hidden files. So here, and this, I'm using Windows 11, and it's a little different on Windows 10, but here I can just, and this is in, Windows Explorer, View, Show, and then here's hidden items. So if I click this, boom, you'll see that .git's gone. So in most cases, you really don't care. It's just that, the fact of hidden files, sometimes they're there for a purpose. You don't want to change anything in here. You can open this up. There's a bunch of stuff in here. You don't want to mess with this, right? But this is what's tracking all your file changes and everything, right? And this is basically your local Git repository. And then if you recall, we went ahead and created this. And this is basically, let me open. So this was that git ignore. This is remember we did this over there in the GitHub Desktop, and it saves it to that directory. So basically, actually, you can even do it manually right in this. We did it through GitHub Desktop, but you can go ahead and make those changes right here in that git ignore file, right? But you always just want to keep that there, okay? Keep that there. So just kind of wanted to review that real quick with you. Oh yeah, Ashton said I sense your streaming is hiding it. Yeah, I think so. But I'll just go ahead and take a look. I don't want to waste time on that. So we did that. Discuss local directory, repository directory, hidden files. So yeah, let's go back to our directories here. So you might as well come in here, since we're going to be doing these other. So you remember how he changed this to old? You might as well just do this now and get it done so you don't get confused later on. And just kind of rename this to old for now. This ain't going to be a problem in the future. Actually, there's only a couple labs that have these things already in there. You can always look at these. Some of them aren't necessarily going to work with within your Visual Studio without making changes to it. So I'm just going to change that to old because we're going to create a lab 2 later, right? So I just did that. But obviously, you can see it's changed, and so if we go back here in GitHub Desktop, this should change it. show it. Yep. So it changed all this. So basically you can sit there and commit the main. Now another thing is I know I was helping a student later in the day yesterday, and for some reason he did not have the screen. I'm not sure why, but you have an option to push origin here, or you can go up here to the top and push origin here. Okay. So that'll take care of that. So yeah, I just want to do a quick review of our assignments that we have, especially since the rest of this week's going to be lab days. So let's go ahead and do that. So there was this naming conventions one. I just went ahead and removed that. I removed that. So in our labs, these are some important things. We've kind of gone over a few of these, some of these, maybe not all of these. We will eventually, but you don't really have to do anything on it. So. And actually, I went ahead and we're going to skip this naming conventions. I know that was enabled and you were seeing that. We're going to skip that. So basically, we have our written 2 test, our chapter 2 written test, and then our chapter 3 written test. And then besides that, we have these labs. We did lab 1 yesterday. We're going to do lab 2 today together. And I actually put I put a screenshot of what it kind of should look like. Okay. Doesn't have to be obviously exactly like this or that, but this is just an example of how it should look. And then we're going to go ahead and get started on this lab 3. I'm going to review a few things before you start, and then you're going to work on it for a while during class. Just getting started. You're not going to probably get it finished, but get it started. And I'm going to come in and I'll go ahead and work through that with you. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and do this lab 4. Actually, lab 4, you're going to just go ahead and do this on your own. But I'll go ahead and go through it before the end of the class today. And this one, you'll go ahead and take care of yourself. Okay? Now, this first week, is kind of, I know there's a lot of information and there's a lot of things to learn, but as far as from the assignment perspective, if you get your written test done, there's not a lot to do if you've been able to keep up. Obviously, it's easier for some people than others, and that's very understandable. Everybody's at a different pace, right? So don't worry about that. Okay, so that's that. So I also did want to mention that I probably should show this in. I need to go back to faculty view on this. So next week we will be doing this hands-on test. Okay, and so the way this hands-on test is going to be done. So Monday's a holiday. So what I'm going to do here, and generally how they do this like in person, is, there's basically a test day. And, I'm going to give you some time. You'll have time to work on this. Now, this is something I'm not going to do for you. This is something that you're really going to have to do yourself. And And if it's hard, don't get too frustrated. It's just one test. The earlier ones are always going to be harder because you don't understand as much, right? But I'll be giving this. So, like I said, though, in the in-person class, this is pretty much given, at the beginning of the day, and you've got a certain amount of hours to complete it. So, but for the online stuff, we're going to do it a little differently because especially some people, work full time in that. So I'm going to give you basically like 48 hours to do it and to complete it. But you will have to, you will need to complete it by the end date there, right? So you'll have like 48 hours. So I'm going to give it to you. We'll do a quick review on how it, on just some of the basics, and then from there, I'll go ahead and assign it, and then you've got basically 48 hours to complete it. So, okay, I had to let somebody else in there. And then also next week we'll be going over chapters 4 and 5 as well. So as far as that's concerned, as far as book chapters, what I'm going to probably end up doing, I'm going to take and I'm probably going to do some screenshots of chapter 4 and 5 of what I have. I have an electronic version, so I'll make those available to you because I know a lot of you don't have books yet, so I'll go ahead and do that. So you'll have chapters for 4 and 5. Hopefully by the next week, we'll have the books in order so people can pick them up. People who are, closer to Wentzville can pick them up there. And then obviously if you live close to this, main campus, you can pick them up at any time. Right. Cause that's where the bookstore is. Okay. So what else we have here? So I'll send an email out, kind of a review of the whole week, assignments, just in case somebody didn't, complete something. And, I'll spend some time and show where we did, like where I showed you how to do the lab 1. And I'll probably show you, I'll probably put the exact time that's in that video because, it's a couple hour video. So, I'll kind of send a lot of specifics about what we did during the week. Okay. And then, so testing our lab. So one thing I did want to do here with you. So this is where I moved this into the fall, right? This different directory. And that's how we changed that in GitHub desktop. So here's our lab, and we completed this lab yesterday, chapter 2, lab 1. And we'll do it a little differently so we don't have multiple lab 1 folders. But so what you should be able to do is if you go to your own local repository, your local Git repository here, should be able to click on your solution, the SLN or the project. Either one of these should bring up Microsoft Visual Studio and put things in order. If you do your project, it's going to go right to the project, the file here. Now, if we do it, the solution though, I believe that's going to be different. Should be different. Oh yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm confusing things from Windows Forms apps, and this is a console app, right? So this is a console app. So basically, if you just double click on the project, it'll bring up your console app here, right? And then you can just run it and just make sure everything runs. And this is the one we did yesterday. Something you got to click it here multiple times to get focus for some reason. So we're talking about that double and decimal places. This will happen if if you put in a number that actually has decimal places. This is what you're going to receive in back, right? So that's that. So you just want to check to see, because I know some people had things in different directories and that. So you want to make sure you click on your project for that console app and make sure it comes up. Okay. So I'll close that one. So I did want to review. So here's one of the students. So like I said, I only cloned one repository, and so when I brought this up, so you see here, this is underlined with red. So this is an error. Now let me explain to you what this error is here. So this won't run. If you try to run this, there were build errors. Would you like to continue to run? No. So what we're going to do here is this red stuff here. What the problem here is, so we define this variable up here, right? And so once you define a variable like this, you can't redefine it again, right? Now, and another thing is we made this a const, which is a constant. So a constant, you can't even change the value of that at all. And so let me kind of show you that a little bit. So even if we get rid of, because there's initialization and declaration. You're declaring a variable. You declare a variable just by doing that, right? Well, actually, all of this. You're declaring the variable by doing that. You're assigning the variable, to this value, right? So you're initializing it to this value. For a const, you can't change the value. But here, you're actually declaring it a second time. Whenever you have a double or whatever in front of this, you're doing another declaration. So if I get rid of this, now you're still not going to be able to do this. And the reason is because you made this a const. If I change it like that, now all of a sudden you can. But for our purposes, we really just want to leave this as a const, all right? But since you actually defined it once, let's just go back to where we were. Since you've already defined this once, you don't need to be defining this again. You just get rid of this line, right? And then so if we click the lab up here, now it's going to work, right? So there you go. All fixed up. So I hope that makes sense. You can't define any variables twice. When I say define a variable or declare the variable, that's actually you're putting the double or int, or it depends on what you're doing. In this case, it's a double. You can't define it twice. So that's the first problem. Then even with that, even if you try to do it like that, you can't do that on a const, because that's a constant, all right? But so you really just don't need that at all, and you're good to go. All right, let's see here. What's next on our list? Has anybody got any questions about that? Everybody good? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do a Chapter 3 overview, PowerPoint presentation. So Chapter 3 is about how to code and test a Windows Form application. Given the code for a simple use of skills presented in this chapter to add the code and test the application. kind of, I've done already some of these. Use indentation and blank lines to make the code easier to read. Use comments to document the code for the entire form or for portions of the code. Use any of the help features to get information that you need for developing an application. And for the knowledge for this, chapter 3 is in the context of object-oriented programming, describe these terms. What's a class? What's an object? What's the concept of instantiation? What's an instance, a property, a method, event, and member? Describe how an application responds to events. Describe the use of snippets and refactoring. Distinguish between a syntax or build error and a runtime error. Distinguish between testing and debugging. Explain how a data type can help debug a runtime error. So here on this, we've got you've got a form, right? Basic, you got your whole form here. You've got label. These are, and then you've got your text boxes, and you've got the 2 buttons, right? So each one of these is an object, right? So you got 4, 8, 10 of these total, right? And then you've got your form. So classes and object concept. An object is a self-contained, like a form or a control that combines code and data. So the form itself is considered an object. And now we're referring to more on the Windows forms as opposed to the console, right? A little bit, some things are a little different, but from a Windows form perspective, all of these things you're seeing on this, when you see a Windows forms, all these things you're seeing are an object, okay? So the form itself is an object, and then all the data controls are also objects. Now a class is the code that defines the characteristics of an object. And you can think of it as a class, as a template. It's a template or a blueprint. So I'm going to show you here in a little bit. So from the form perspective, these things are objects itself. These are kind of built-in objects. These are part of the Windows form platform. These built-in objects. But you can also create your own objects, your own classes, your own objects for other reasons. For probably what you're trying to achieve on that form, you can actually create objects for that as well. And I'll show you that here in a little bit after we get done. So remember, a class is a blueprint or a template, and you actually, an object is called an instance of a class. It's an instance of a class. And I'll show you some examples of that as well. And the process of creating an object from a class is called instantiation. So basically, you have a class, okay? And then from that class, you can create objects, right? And to create an object, you instantiate the class, and the whole concept is basically called instantiation, the instantiation of a class, right? Don't worry if this is confusing. This is a little harder to grasp. After you spend some time with it, and, as your skills, as you learn a little more, it'll make a lot more sense, okay? More than one object instance can be created from a single class. And I'll show you that. We're going to create, I think, an example I have. I think we created like 6 different objects. So I'm going to show you that. So objects have properties. Properties define the characteristics of an object, okay? So let's look at a car. So let's just say a car. A car has different properties. It has a manufacturer. It has a model. It has a year. It has an engine. It has a price. All of these things are characteristics of that car object, and these are considered the properties, right? Methods are the operations that an object can perform. So in the case of a car, let's say we have a car object, right? A car can drive, it can brake, right? It can do other things as well, right? So these are things that, methods are generally mostly action type words, right? And then events are signals sent by an object to the application, telling it that something has happened that can be responded to. So the best kind of explanation of that is more like when we do the Windows forms, right? You click a button, right? And when you click that button, that's an event, right? That's an event that's happening, right? And then based on that event, we can do different code. We can hide something, show something, display something, right? So properties, methods, and events can be referred to as members of an object, right? All three of these are members. Properties, methods, events are referred to as members of an object. If you instantiate two or more instances of the same class, all of the objects have the same properties, methods, and events. Okay, so you define, your class has all this code in it, right? And so you defined all of your properties, your methods. So like for the car object, I have a class that defines manufacturer, all year, color, price. So all of these are properties, and these are defined in the class. So when you instantiate that class, you have all those properties. But you can change those properties. Once you instantiate that class, you can change those properties. Or there's another way you can actually send in those properties into that class when you create a new class and create a new object. I'm sorry. And I'll show you that. I'm going to show you that here in a little bit. Okay. So when you instantiate two or more instances of the same class, all the objects have the same properties, methods, and events. It has the properties, but those properties could be different. Like I'm going to have a different car objects. And so these different car objects are like, you're going to have a Toyota manufacturer. You're going to have a Honda, so forth, okay? And so they're going to have, those will be different. I'll show you how this all works. However, the values assigned, like it says here, to the properties can vary from one instance to another. And that's what I'm trying to say there. So when you use the form designer, Visual Studio automatically generates C# code and creates a new class based on the form class. Then you run the project, a form object is instantiated from the new class. So from the Windows form perspective, just, the controls, the GUI itself, right? When I'm talking about my car object is basically a kind of a domain, a business object that I'm trying to do something with, right? But that's not the GUI itself. Them are kind of like two separate things. The GUI is your buttons and your labels and all of that, right? And that is actually, that's the Visual Studio web forms, right? So when you run the project, it's instantiated from the new class. So when you add a control to a form, Visual Studio automatically generates the C code in the class for the form and instantiates a control object from the appropriate class and sets the control's default properties. Okay? So all this stuff here is happening under the hood, so to speak, right? Visual Studio takes care of all this as far as from the GUI perspective, So when you move and size a control, Visual Studio automatically sets the properties that specifies the location and size of the control. Okay. So here's a member list in the code editor window. You have all these different things you can choose from, right? So the syntax for referring to a member of a class or object is your class name dot member name. Okay. Or it's going to show in lowercase here. This is the object. This is a class. So you can have a class that's not instantiated, right? So there's different kinds. This can be a little confusing. We'll get into this more later, but you can actually call things right on the class that you created, or you can call things on the object that you created. Okay. So statements that refer to properties, text total equals text equals 10. Text total dot read only equals true. And, this first one assigns a string holding the number 10 to the text property of the text box name text total. That's kind of all confusing. The text box is an object, though, right? So assigns the true read-only assigns a true value to the read-only property of the text box name text total, so the user can change its contents. Okay. So from here, don't worry about this too much. This is going to take some time to learn all this stuff. So please don't get too frustrated with it. So statements that refer to methods. So in this case, you've got a text monthly investment, and you're doing a dot focus. So this is basically a text box that you have, and you're doing dot focus on that. So usually whenever you see something like this, open and close parentheses, this is always going to be basically always going to be a method, right? And here's a dot close. This uses the close method, so it calls the close method on this. And this is calling a dot focus on this, right? So if you have a text box called monthly investment, and then you dot focus, it's going to put focus in there, in that text box, right? Display the list of available members for your class or an object. Type the class or object name followed by a period called a dot operator, or just a dot, right? And that's what we've seen. You do the name of it, and then your member, class, or object, and the dot, and then follow it by a period, right? Type one or more letters of the member's name, and the code editor will select the first entry in the list that matches those letters. So it has that automatic. You can put it in there, and it'll show your options, right? Or you can scroll down the list to select the members you want. Press the tab or enter key to insert the member into your code. I know we've already done that a little bit before. Event, the user clicks the exit button. So here, situation of event, which, we've already done this a little bit, right? We click, I think our others, what do we have? A submit button. So here's an exit button. And then basically when you click that, there's code. So the application determines what method to execute on click. Yeah, I don't know if I quite like this, but okay. So the method for the click event of the exit button is executed. And we've seen where we have that button.click. Remember that one time we cut and paste some code in there, right? Paste some code in that button event, right? So here's some common control events. Click, double click, enter. Enter, when the focus is moved to the control, when you enter into that. Basically the things usually a lot of times you're not really moving focus into a label, but you move focus into a text box, or you move focus onto the button, because if you've got that tab order, it'll actually highlight that button, but it doesn't really execute that button until you either, when we had our lab we did yesterday, there's really 3 different ways to execute that button. Remember, we could click it, we could click the button, or we could hit the enter key, right? Or we had we did the access key where we did the Alt S. So that was 3 ways to actually click the button, right? So that would still called the click event. All three of those still called the click event, right? Now entering the focus is moved to the control, and that can be done by you kind of highlighting it, highlighting it yourself. You click on the text box, it's going to put focus in there, or you go in tab. When you tab through things, sometimes you can put focus in there as well. Okay. Common form elements, events. You have load, closing, closed. The form is loading into memory. Closing, the form is closing. So you could do some stuff where it's time to close the form. You can do some things. Usually, a lot of times when you exit, sometimes especially if it's it's an application that's changing data. When you hit exit, you want to ask, hey, are you sure you've got unsaved data? Would you like to save your data before continuing? Yes or no, right? So that's what you would do kind of in that situation. And then, there might be some situations where, once it's closed, you want to do something as well after it's closed. So have that option as well. Where was I at there? Yeah. How an application responds to events. Window Forms application work by responding to events that occur on objects. To indicate how an application should respond to an event, you code an event handler, which is a special type of method that handles the event. To connect the event handlers to the event, Visual Studio automatically generates a statement that wires the event to the event handler. This is known as event wiring. Okay. An event can be an action that's initiated by the user, like a click event, or it can be an action initiated by a program code, like the closed event. Okay. So, and we've already seen this. We've seen this yesterday. We have this button.click, and then basically you have your code in here, right? And in this case, it's doing an exit. So based on the exit, and there's some things you'd want to do when you're closing it. You may want to say, hey, you made some changes. Are you sure you'd like to close this? Yes or no, right? How to handle the event of a button. In the Form Designer, double-click on the button. This opens up the code editor, generates the declaration for the method that handles the event, and places the cursor within this declaration. Type the C code between the open braces and the closing braces. We've already done all of this. When you're finished writing code, you can return to the Form Designer by clicking on its tab. That's at the top, right? How to handle the load event for a form. Follow the procedure above, but double click on the form itself. Okay. What are we going to look at here? So obviously this is the completion list that's displayed when you enter a letter at the beginning of a line of code. Also when you type a period, sometimes once you start typing something, it's going to bring up your options. And it's going to pretty much have the most common things first, or things that's referred to within your code will be there. So it's a lot of times things that are referred to your code, or just the most common things will be first. Obviously this can be quite numerous different options in here to choose from. Obviously, you'll have to know what you're doing to select different things, but it's a nice tool once you start getting in there and you're starting to do a lot of coding, right? So it's showing a completion list that's displayed when you enter code and statement. Kind of know this. Event handlers for the invoice, total form. Okay. So, what we did yesterday, we just had a simple little code. We put in the button click. But, in this case, there's significantly more code. You're doing some logic, right? These are called, if statements. And I know we did go through the expressions, like this is greater than or equal to. So basically here, you're creating a decimal, a subtotal, and assigning it assigning it to whatever's in the text subtotal.text. You're converting this to a decimal, and then you're putting in this in subtotal. Then you're basically taking and doing logic on that. If the subtotal is greater than or equal 500, then you want to set your discount percent to 500. No, I mean to .2m, right? To .2. Else, if subtotal is greater than or equal to 250, and subtotal is less than 500, so it's in between those. It has to be in between both, so it's got to be greater than 250, greater than or equal to 250, and less than 500, right? Then you're going to set your discount percentage to 0.15. Here, you've got a subtotal. If your subtotal is greater than 100 and your subtotal is less than 250, so that's basically covering the one that this is not covering, right? Less than this. So it's less than 250 or greater than 100, then set your discount percent to 0.1. So it's just kind of showing an event handler. This is one thing we probably didn't do yesterday. We'll do this in the future. Dot focus. We're going to put focus in the field. So basically, you can have some code, and then after your code, one of and it could be any field on that page that you may want to put focus in. You can do that by having the name of the field and then doing a dot focus on that. Okay. And then here it's just basically on button exit click. It's just closing it out here, right? One thing I did kind of want to talk about, saying things that are kind of defined maybe in these PowerPoint presentations, and then things that I've done throughout my career, and then now that there's later versions of software and frameworks and programming languages, sometimes those different like coding standards kind of change or are more preferred. So you'll see that, and sometimes you're going to see in your code in Visual Studio where it has something marked, it has a little suggestion like you really should do it like this. So we're going to spend some time going through that, because some of those, and I'm probably a little stale in that area because I'm used to doing things probably a little bit more from more in the past. Things have changed over time, and there's more common type coding standards that they prefer, that they've kind of migrated to more as time's gone on. Okay, so we'll discuss those, but a lot of these are going to should be pretty a lot of these are going to definitely be necessary. Use spaces to separate words in each statement. Use exact capitalization for all keywords, class name, object names, and variable names. So, some of this capitalization stuff has changed over time on what should be, from my days, a variable always started with a lowercase, but, there's some different thoughts on how, there's different kind of common practices that have kind of changed that a little bit. But, so like variables were lowercase, class names are always uppercase, but, we'll spend some time on that. And so you understand. So we're all on the same page going forward here. Okay. Now this, this is, you do need to do this for sure. You need to end each statement with a semicolon. Each block of code must be enclosed in braces. Yes, that's still true. That includes a block of code that defines the body of a method. Yes. So, that's one thing. That's one thing, people make a lot of mistakes with, is having an open parenthesis, brace, curly brace, an open curly brace, and they forgot the the closing ones, and especially when you're doing a lot of code and then you start deleting stuff and that, you can get those messed up. It's going to happen to you. It happens to everyone. So you just got to watch. You got to spend some time looking. Okay, here's my open. Where's my closing one? Right. So that's going to happen. That happens to everyone. Okay. Code editor and error list windows. So I kind of showed you that example where we had that kilometer, that constant in that one lab. We had a duplicate, so it turned it red. Same thing there, right? A method written in a readable style. I don't know how readable it is, but okay. Yeah. Well, it's just showing you, it's good to have when you create a method. It's, you want to have your curly brace. You don't want it to be, way over here. You kind of want it to be lined up, so then you can look at your ending one. Let's see if they have it. They don't even have the ending one. Is it on the next page? Yeah, I think it's a 2-page thing here. But this ending one here is going to line up with that one, right? You want to line up your, here's an if statement. Here's an if statement where you've got your curly brace here and there. So, just for readability, it helps you, and it helps for your, to make sure you're not confused, or the person who comes after you. So a lot of times when you get out in the workforce, you're going to be writing some code. You're going to be submitting your code using version control system. It could be Git. It could be some other ones. There's other ones as well. But, you're going to be submitting your code just like we're submitting our code in here. But when you're working in a company, you could be doing that, and then you move on to something else, and someone else might be coming in and picking up your code, right? So some other changes might be needed to the code, and so somebody else is doing that, right? So you want to kind of leave your code so it's readable and understandable to other people, right? A method written in a readable style. That was the end of that one. Yeah, a method written in less readable style. Yeah. And all of us kind of sometimes when you're coding, unless you're very careful, you're going to have some things a little bit out of whack now and then. There's ways to reformat the code and stuff in the editors as well. But, you just kind of want to make sure that, you don't have it looking something like this because it's unreadable, and you'd have to kind of really fix it to understand what's going on, right? Use indentations and extra spaces to align statements and blocks of code so they reflect the structure of the program. Use spaces to separate the words, operators, and values in each statement. So yeah, let's just actually kind of look. So yeah, you want to make sure that here you don't do it like that. It's best to. It's harder to read. It's better to do that. All right. So words, operate values. Use blank lines before and after groups of related statements. As you enter code in the code editor, Visual Studio automatically adjusts its formatting by default. Here's a method with comments. So to do I think we already I think we touched on this before, but this is how you do a comment, multi-line comment. You do a / and an asterisk, right? This has multiple asterisks, so it's saying, what this is kind of saying here is, I'm just going to put a space here. This is basically saying anything after this is a comment until you get to the end comment. This is the beginning. This is the end of a multi-line comment. This is the beginning of a multiple line comment. Here, so this is always, just kind of extra stuff, right? It's just making it easier to kind of read this little block, all of this. But like I'm saying, this comment is basically this part. All of this is ignored by the compiler in that, right? So it's not going to say, oh, this is code, I need to compile this. No, it's going to ignore that. So this is how you start it, and this is how you end it. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And you use a double / just for a single comment for a single line right here. And you can do it like this as well. You can do it one after another. Also, you can do it at the end of a statement. So it's just it's basically, this is saying everything to the end of this line, right? So if you had other code after this, even if you had spaces, you had other code over here, it's still going to be ignored. It's going to be ignored until the end of the line, right? A method with comments. Okay, so. Comments are used to help document what a program does and what the code within it does. Okay, and we already talked about this. Single line comment, and then using the delimited comment, basically for multiple lines. The code editor and text editor. Just showing some comments. And sometimes you do want to do this. Like if you write some code and you say, I kind of really like to refactor this. Refactor really means, I created some code, but I'd kind of like to fix it a little bit. I think I could do this a little differently. Sometimes it's best just to, instead of just deleting it, comment out those lines. Okay, comment out those lines, and then do your new code. And obviously it's a kind of good reference as you're doing your new code as well, right? And so you can to display or hide text editor toolbar. Right click on the toolbar area, choose this. Okay, execute it. Okay. Yeah, sometimes when you're testing something, you may want to, that's one way to do it. There's really nowadays, and there's better ways to comment out your code. But, it happens. So you just, you're testing something and you want to comment out some certain things. That's very possible. I mean, I've done that in the past, a long time ago. To move quickly between two lines of code, you can use the last 4 buttons on the text editor toolbar to set. All right. How to collapse regions of your code. I don't know, maybe we didn't look at that much, but we'll go ahead and review that here in a little bit. The completion list. We know about completion lists for the if keyword. Okay. The if sniplet after it has been inserted. Okay. So you can rename a variable. Sometimes, there's times, there's different ways to kind of rename a variable, and we'll I think we've probably, we want to do, especially if it's a variable that's used different places besides that one file. Sometimes, that's why, a lot of times we want to change that. We use that properties window, and when we're doing a Windows form, we change the name of that, so that ends up changing in the code. But also within your code, sometimes there might be some variables that might be referenced in other places besides just that one block of code. So when there's ways to do that, so that it'll go ahead and rename that in all places, all references to that. Okay. Rename dialog box. Okay. How to test. So I am going to show you on debugging. Get a breakpoint. So breakpoint. I'm going to show you how to do breakpoint in code. How we debug, how we put the thing in debug, so you can see the values of that. will stop at a certain line so we can look at it. We can inspect it at a different line. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that here today in a little bit. All right. So kind of went over a little over an hour here. So let's go ahead and take a 15-minute break. So let's just say 9:15. Come, a little bit before 9:30. Come back. Let's just make it 9:30. Just come on back at 9:30, and I'm going to show you. I was talking about the different objects. We had the Windows form objects. Them are basically your GUI type things, and then I've created a different object, kind of a coding object, just for kind of a domain, a business kind of logic type thing, right? So I'm going to show you that. Okay, so come back at 9:30. Okay, want to go through little form app I made. I made this last night. So just to kind of review about objects a little bit. So basically, the form itself is an object, self-contained object, right? Each button is an object. This text box is an object, right? So these are all the window forms built-in type objects, right? But you can have your own developer-created objects, right? And you can, but they're not related to, for what I'm doing here is not related really to the form. What I did is create an object, and what I did is I created a car object, okay? And don't worry if you don't understand what all this means, okay? But just kind of wanted to show you a little bit what an object kind of is from like a developer kind of object, right? So I have a object called car, right? And I have different properties. We talked about properties, right? I have manufacturer, model, year, color, engine type, horsepower, price. These are all properties of the car object. Okay. Obviously, something like color, probably I just had selected a color, but it'd be better to have multiple colors, right? Here's all the colors are available for this model, this year from this manufacturer, right? But I didn't do that. So what I wanted to kind of show you here, and you don't have to worry about, you understand all this. There's kind of like two different ways to set your properties on your object. You can set them by just creating a new car object and then doing car dot manufacturer equals Toyota, car dot model equals, Camry, right? Car dot year equals 2024, right? So that's after, but that would be after you created a new car object, right? You would do it like that. The other way is to actually like pass them in, and that's kind of called a constructor. And in this case, this is a constructor, and we're gonna spend time and learn all this stuff, throughout the course later on. Okay, so this is a constructor, and basically, and I'm going to show you, we're calling it from a different place. We're calling this car object. We're creating a car object, and when we call it, we actually pass in values. And this is a constructor. And what this does is the passed in value manufacturer, assign that to your manufacturer, which is your property up here, right? The model that's coming in, assign that to model that's up here, right? So these will all hold on to the properties you send in, okay? And what you can actually do is when we talked about you create an instance of an object, you create an instance of an object, and that object have different values, and all that stuff all those different objects actually are held in memory. Some are all individual objects. In our case, I think I have 6 different ones. So we'll have 6 different objects that's held in memory, okay? And that will be in memory until we exit the application, and then it gets cleaned up, right? But them objects, once we create those objects, they will be held in memory until we close the application, right? So, so here's the object. Like I said, that we're using a constructor, and I'm going to show you we're going to be passing that in, and then actually and then this is an object we've got here, and what we're doing is we're basically printing out all of this information. This is actually a method. This is a method on this object, and it's basically printing out all the information, okay? And if you want to, just so you know, this dot, we'll learn all these things. This \r means carriage return. So return a new row. For our console apps, I know we just did a \n, and that'll create a new line, right? That's for new line character. But for this text box, you have to actually do a carriage return to go to the next line. Don't worry about that right now. I'm just kind of pointing that out. We'll review that. We'll discuss that later in the future, okay? So here's our car object. And here, what we're doing here is we're creating references to a different car. We have before we had like a double, right? We defined a double equals 10 or 10.5 or something, right? Here, our type, okay, this is a private. It's just saying it's a private, so it's only accessible within this class. But the type, like I was saying before, we created doubles. Our type is car, so this is a type of car object, right? So when we create this variable here, this is a car. This is an object. Car 1 is of type car. Car 2 is of type car, etc., all the way through car 6. Then down here, what we're doing is, and we're initializing this. This is basically all happening when we hit the start button of that farm. All of this stuff is being created, okay? And it's creating when we said, initialize, you have a class. So this is our class, right? We talked about having a class. This is our blueprint. This is our template, right? This is where we're instantiating these classes. We're creating objects from that class. So here we've got car 1. We're setting that to new car. And like I said, the way we're doing this is we're using constructor. The other way would be just do a new car, open and close parentheses, and then you'd have to do car 1 dot manufacturer, car 1 dot model, right? But this way, we're actually just sending this in all in what's called a constructor that we have defined in our class. So we're sending all these values in, right? So we've got 6 different ones here, okay? And then we have our different buttons for each button on that screen. What we're doing is, so if we do the Camry click, we click the Camry button, then it's going to do this text results, which is the form text box dot text equals our car1 dot toString, and that was that method that we created, right? This toString method, okay? So this is basically going to print all the information that ends up here that we're passing in here. It's going to end up printing all that information, and it's going to set that on the text property of our text results box. And our text results box, is that text box we have, right? And so we have a button for each one: Camry, Mustang, Model 3, which is a Tesla, a Civic, a Silverado, and a BMW X5, right? So let's go back to our thing here. So in here, let's go ahead and we're just going to go ahead and click this. And when we click this, it's actually, I talked about all those objects. It's actually instantiating on all those objects. Them objects have already been created now that we're at this point. Those objects were all created, so that the objects are there. They're stored in memory. And when I say memory, it's basically here within Visual Studio. It handles all that, right? So within Visual Studio, they have a memory location. It's holding on to these 6 objects right now that we created, right? When I click these, it's going to run that toString, and it's going to run that toString method, and it's going to display the information in here in our text box, right? So there's our Civic, Honda Civic. There's our Silverado. There's our X5. There's our Camry. There's our Mustang. And then there's our Model 3. So this is, this car object. This is a developer created, user created. We created this ourselves. A little different than just saying, so all of these within the Win forms, I know I've said this multiple times, but all these buttons are objects, this field's an object, and actually the whole form's an object itself, right? But so we kind of looking at it 2 different ways, right? Now, us creating this, we're gonna go into all this, okay? Not today, but you'll learn how to do all this, okay? One thing I did want to do, let's go ahead. That's better work for me. I'm not having very good luck today with things working. So I by doing this, putting this over, I'm putting a breakpoint here, okay? Let me stop that. That was running. So you have to stop that before you do it. Okay, now, so that's a lot of times when you're playing around, you wonder what's going on, and then a lot of times, so let me get rid of this breakpoint. Sometimes if you move around, this thing will end up down there, and you'll have to find it. So you can, close it, right? Or you can just hit this stop button and it'll stop it and you're good to go, right? So sometimes you kind of lose where that is. You'd have to go find it down there in your status bar, or, you can just hit that red button to get rid of it, right? So here what we're wanting to do is we want to go ahead. I wanted to show you debugging. So here I'm going to click on the second one here. And when we hit this, when we start this form up, okay? When we start this form up, it's actually going to stop at this line of code, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So it stopped at that line of code when it was executing. And so we've got this car 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of these haven't been created yet. Only this car 1's been created. If you kind of come down here at the bottom here, you can see Here's your car one, and this is going to become very valuable as time goes on. You can use this on your console apps, and any of your code. You can put a breakpoint in anything, and you should be able to view it, right? So in this case, we've already created, and it actually shows both the properties and its value, right? For the car one. Car one's already been created. You got a manufacturer, Toyota, model Camry. I have to hover over that. Year 2022. So all the properties and all the values are right here. It's showing you. So this object's already been created. It's sitting in memory. Because like over here, this diagnostic stuff, you don't have to worry about what this all means. But, it's basically, this is kind of this application running, and it's allocating space and everything for this application to run, right? It's using the CPU in your computer and everything else, right? So that car object 1 is in memory. Car object 2 isn't in memory yet, right? So let's put another breakpoint here, and we can go up here and click step over, and then it's going to go on to 3. It didn't really step over it yet, did it? So, yeah, so you can see, oh, it did. So here's your other objects. It's just showing the one we're on right now. So car 3 is right there. It initialized car 4, but it didn't assign the value yet. Initialized it to null, but it hasn't assigned any values yet, okay? Car 3 now has its values, which was a Tesla Model 3, all right? So just kind of wanted to show you can do this in your code for anything you're doing, and we can look at this later when we do a console app as well. I'll go ahead and show you this again, but it's a very heavy, very useful tool. So I'm going to get rid of those breakpoints over there, and you can actually just up here do the step over. Yeah, it's gonna. And you can just go ahead and click continue up here. It'll be continue. And you can just click continue. And there's our thing. And so like here's another one. Like we could show you. Let me show you this. I could go show you this as well. So in our car object here, let's put a breakpoint here on this. It takes time to learn how to do this and be helpful for you, but you'll get there. So here, let's go ahead. And so we're going to go ahead and do this again. And it's going to show up because we haven't gotten to this code yet, right? This code's called on a click event, right? And so when you click this, it's going to call this code, and there we go. And so you can see this just refers to the current object, and this current object has the Honda Civic, right? And so here's the value of this, and then once we click continue, there you go. So I hope that helps a little bit, getting started with this. I know, it'll take a while, but the where we instantiated those car objects, that was done, that was done in the form, right? That was done in that form. That was done in here, and this is done on just initializing everything. So basically, when you click the button to start the app, boom, all those car objects are created. And so when that screen gets displayed, it's already holding on to all those objects, okay? In this case, we did it on the method that's called by the on-click event. So we're not going to hit that code until we click the on-click event, right? So there we go. So I don't know if all of this was, you understand a little bit of this. I know that, especially going through that PowerPoint presentation is kind of grueling sometimes. I hope we're able to learn a few things on that, and I hope that this helps here. You know, talking about the kind of talking about objects where you've got the user created object, developer created objects. You've also got the WinForms objects, right? So let's go ahead and next here, I think we'll go ahead and okay. Hope everybody got a chance to maybe not finish the written test, but at least work on it. So let's go ahead and review that now. I hope everybody had a chance to work on the written test. Maybe you weren't able to finish it, but hopefully you got some of it done. So just kind of review it. An object is an instance of a class. Correct? A class is a blueprint of an object. I believe both of them came right out of that little study guide I had. So I know we mentioned both of those before. So the object being an instance of a class, and a class is a blueprint of an object. Instantiation is the process of generating an object from a class. An operation that an object can perform is called a method. So object perform methods, it's usually an action type thing on click. You know, if you had a user defined object, like we had the car, we didn't define a lot of methods. We had that two-string thing, but other kind of methods would be like drive, break, start, right? So them would be other methods, and a lot of times they're performing something, they're doing something, right? A lot of times they're action words, so keep that in mind. Which of the following is not defined by a class? So class has notices, events, methods, and properties. It does not have notices. To refer to a property of an object in your C# code, you code the object name followed by a period, which is a dot, right? By a period, a dot, and the property name. What does the following code do? Text monthly investment dot focus calls the focus method of the text monthly investment control. To say that C# application is event driven means that it responds to user events and other types of events. Right? Not just user events, it's user events and other types of events. What is the term for a method that responds to an event? That's called an event handler. What event does Visual Studio generate code for when you double click a button in the form designer? And that is a click. So if you recall, we did that multiple times in the designer. We're in the designer, we double click it, it opens up the code, right? What is the name of the method generated if you double click a button named button process in the form designer? So the form designer will create the code and it will create the method button process underscore click, right? Blocks of code are enclosed in braces, these curly braces, right? C statements must end with a semicolon, always end in a semicolon. A syntax error is defined in the code editor. Usually you're going to see the little squiggly red lines underneath of it. And it's also an error in the error list window. We probably didn't really go through that, but it's also in the error list window. Which of the following is not recommended way to improve the readability of your C# code? Use all capital letters for variable names. You generally don't want to use all capital for your variable names. I guess we did do that for constants. But you kind of did the underscores and stuff like that. But just in general, I don't think they're really referring to constants here, so maybe that's a little confusing. But which of the following is a valid comment? So out of all your choices here, you have the double forward slash. That's a one-line comment, right? And so that comments to the end of that line. So wherever you put that forward slash, the rest of that line is all commented out, right? Which of the following statements is true? Well, the first three are not true. The comments can be inaccurate and out of date. So, sometimes people will put comments in your code in their code, and somebody could come in and actually change the code and didn't update the comments. So it's easy for comments to be, or they didn't understand what was going on. So, you can't always trust the accuracy of comments. But hopefully you got quality comments, but they might not always be accurate, and they might be out of date because somebody come in and changed the code but didn't change the comment, right? So to insert the starting code for an if statement into the code of the form, you can use the code snippet to change the name of all occurrences of a variable name. After you change the first occurrence, you can use what's called the concept of refactoring, right? Use refactoring. When an application encounters a problem that prevents a statement from being executed, that say a runtime error occurs. When an application encounters a problem that prevents the statement from being executed. So when we seen that error earlier, when we had that variable that was created twice, it wouldn't even build. You couldn't even run the application at all. It wouldn't even compile, right? Behind the scenes, like I said, it's always, in Visual Studio's basically compiling that code, right? When you click that for a Windows form, when you click that, it's actually compiling the code, right? When you test an application, your goal is to find runtime errors. So testing's after, you brought up your application. It's already, you brought it up, and then you're clicking buttons, putting values in text boxes, stuff like that. That's the process of testing an application, right? And so your goal with testing is to find runtime errors, right? Syntax errors are found, that's part of the build process, part of, compiling that code, right? It won't compile if there's syntax errors. Runtime errors don't happen during build time. They build fine, everything's fine. Then there's something else that, because something's unavailable or whatever, you click something and boom, it blows up. That's basically called, that's a runtime error. What is another name for runtime error? It's also called an exception. A data tip. A data tip displays the value of a variable or a property. Okay. Which of the following choices adds a comment and says currency format to the end of the line of code? So you're basically just putting a comment, right? So we know which one of these are comments. It's the forward slash. So it's this one right here, last one. Which of the following statement calls the close method of the current form? Current form's considered this. When you say this, you're saying this form. So this dot close. Okay. So how did anybody get a chance to do some of those at least, or and did the study guide help you at all on this? Can you put a message in the chat? Didn't study guide did not help or did help, and I know everything was in that study guide, but you know, uh, and don't feel bad about missing some. And I'll tell you, I just want to let you know, a lot of students, there's a lot of, some weeks. Actually, I'm kind of providing extra stuff. And the last course I taught on HTML, there's a lot of people that failed them or got lower grades. So don't feel bad if you don't do great. It's you know, it's not worth as much to your score. As other things are. But please, you please still do them. But just don't get hung up on it if you didn't do well. You think you're not, you're stupid or you're not, you don't know what's going on. It's hard. You could reading the chapters helps. Doing the chapters. The chapters will help you with a lot. The study guide was just a little other benefit to help a little bit. So don't worry about it. I don't even know. And hopefully I told you the right answers to these. So let me submit this. And sometimes these tests don't always get graded accurately either. There's a system here. So let me see what happens here on this. Okay, good. So at least everything we answered there was correct. So that's good. And like I said, don't worry about your grade. Don't worry about if you don't do well. There's people get 50%, even lower sometimes on these. But that don't mean you shouldn't try to do well, right? It is a little portion of your grade. It all adds up, right? Maybe you're doing not so good on the other things, the labs or something. The written tests, you do really good on them. It can help. And plus, it's a lot of the concept areas, right? Sometimes some of those questions like, okay, well, we don't really use this. We haven't done this. And you might not use some certain things. So, but, it does provide a good foundation for you. Okay. So good. Let's stop that then. So the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is work on the lab, which is definitely more fun than a lot of this other stuff, isn't it? Let me pull that back up. Let me go grab that again here. So this next lab here, we're going to write a console program that calculates the average grade for a student, prompts the user for 4 test scores. So we'll have to have 4 different prompts, and then we're going to display the average of the entered text scores. It should resemble, when I put that screenshot in there. So test score 1, 2, 3, enter them, and then here's your average, right? So, okay, so first what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. And we want to do a console app, and just kind of reviewing here real quick. We'll kind of review this. Just, people make this mistake. I made the mistake the other day. So the console app, you don't want to choose this one because it doesn't have C# there. That's the Visual Basic one, right? So this one up here has C#. Right? The same thing with your Windows forms. Make sure it says C#. So you select that one, click Next. Then here, I'm going to call this, I am going to change this to my channel chapter 2. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to hit select folder. So in our chapter 2, So I think yesterday we had those double folders. So as long as you put in chapter 2, and we can make this project name. Probably going forward, maybe we can call it other things. Maybe something specific to what it is, but just lab 1 here, or lab 2. So that'll should create the folder there under that chapter 2. So there'll just be one lab 2. So especially since we renamed it. Remember we renamed it. So we renamed to old, right? So that'll help. Okay, gotta admit him. All right. So under chapter 2, so yep, make sure that location. And I think for the most part, it's always best to have the solution and project in the same directory. Just keep all that together. So I'd always have that selected. Might not have mentioned that before, but the solution name will be lab 2, project name lab 2, and then we're going to have it in our repository, in our local Git repository, right? And then we're going to click next. We're going to use the .NET 8.0, create. Okay. And we're just going to, it puts this in by default. So we're going to get rid of that. So as you recall, the first thing that we put in here, we're going to put in the system, right? We always have to put in our using system at the top, right? So we're going to put in using system. There we go. Double click it. Make sure you got a semicolon, right? After that, we want to use, we have to create a namespace. And we're going to do namespace lab 2. And then here, we want to create the name of our program. Oh, it's actually right here. Huh? Yeah, we got it. Okay. So here, I'm going to do internal class. And call it program. And after that, we'll do a curly brace. And we want to do the static. So we're going to do static void main. Right, and then we're going to do the string args. So it's giving us the suggestions. So we're just going to hit tab. We're going to accept that. We're going to accept that, and then we're going to click that. And we're going to put another curly brace. Okay. Now from there, so what we're going to have is what we're going to have to keep track of is we're going to have to keep track of we're going to really basically have to keep track of two things. We're going to have to keep track of we're going to have scores, right? And these scores is like we're going to be entering, it's going to be entered multiple times, right? So we need to have a variable that we're going to use to put the scores in, and then we need to iterate that, right? So what we're going to, I don't want to say iterate it, we're going to have to add to it. So let's do a double scores and set that default that to 0. And then, sorry, I'm having. And then, and let's also do average equals 0 also. And then let's do a console.write. Yep, that's what we're wanting to do there. Yep, of course it's never used. So in here, what we want to do is say enter test score 1. Then and that we'll put a break here, line. And then what we're wanting to do here, so what this is going to do is going to bring back that first test score. So if you kind of remember, we used like console.readline, right? So we use that console.readline to get, when someone enters something, the console.readline is going to get that data, right? So basically what we're going to want to do here, though, is we want to take our scores, okay? Help if I spell it right. Scores, and what we're going to use is I don't think we discussed this, we're going to use this. And what this does is basically going to say, take scores, add it to whatever's over here. We haven't put it yet. Take scores, add it to whatever's here, and then put the value back into scores. So that way we can, every time we get a score, we read line to get a score, we can just keep on adding it to scores. So this, and then we'll take that and we're gonna divide that, right? Because how many scores we get, and then that will be our average, right? So here, and then so what we want to do here is we want to convert to double, right? And just choose that, right? And then here we want to do the console dot readline, and we can do that. Okay. And then actually becomes a lot easier. We just cut and paste that, copy this multiple times. And this next one, we're going to change this to 2. There is easier ways, okay? There's better ways to do it than this. I'm just kind of, I don't want to make it more complicated and bring in other concepts into what we're doing here. So we're just kind of going to do it over and over again. There's better ways of doing this, right? So that's our score 2, and then we're going to do this again for our 3. How many do we doing? 4. And then, so this is going to be number 3, and this is going to be number 4. And then we're going to keep on adding to scores here, right? We're going to keep adding to scores. And then what are we wanting to do after that? So we want to take our average, right? Our average is going to equal what? It's going to equal to our scores divided by 4. And then we're going to want to do another console.write, just like that. Yep. And here we're going to use this, that interpolation, right? So we're going to use the $sign here, and then we're going to use the quote, and then we're going to do the average of these 4 test scores is, and then we're going to do, we have to do the curly brace, and inside the curly brace, we need to put average. So that's going to put that variable we have, the average variable, right in there, right? Then we're going to end that. Then we got to end our, always got to end our parentheses there and put that. So that should take care of that. And then if you recall, we also, so that the thing don't close on you, we need to do the console dot read key. And I did want to show you something else about that because I changed my configuration. So there's that, and this is complaining because of that. Yeah. This is opened. This is closed. Oh yeah, I'm not thinking here. And we have to have another one. And I'll fix that, all that. Okay. So yeah, you know, I do it a lot myself. So you got to make sure whenever you have a, you know, make sure you always have your braces and make sure they're in the proper order. The Visual Studio will take care of that. You know, it kind of formats it very nicely for you. So we have all of this. I think that this should be good here. So let's save this. Let's get rid of that space there. Okay. Let's save this. And we'll go ahead and give this a try. Let's see. There were build errors. Public. Oh. So you got to be careful. It's capital M for main. There we go. Enter test score number 1. So let's enter 1. And then enter 85, 70, 90. There you go. The average of these 4 test scores is 81.25. So I think that fulfills that. Has anybody been out? How's everybody doing? Are you following along? Are you coding along with me, or just watching? Watching's fine as well. But just kind of wondering if anybody's coding and got this to work. Okay, good. Hayden said he's got it going, working, got it going. Good, good. Okay, so yeah, so basically, you know, this is assignment lab 2. Looks good here. I don't really see much that needs to be done. You know, I always kind of try to clean it up a little bit when I'm not making mistakes, like the main method. Yeah, sometimes you don't even see stuff like that, you know. I did it kind of have a, but you know, down there in the error message, I really didn't read it all the way. But you know, like if I had main here, oh, now it's telling me that. It didn't before though, did it? It didn't have that underline like that. So I don't know. Okay. So then basically, you know, just do this again. Oh, here, did want to show you something here. So and yours is going to be the default options, you know. So what I did here on this, so you go, we'll do this again, but go into debugging and then I'll put this back. So this is how it's going to be out of the box. Automatically close the console when debugging stops. Hit OK. So I'm putting this back to how it would be default. Let me click the X there to stop it. And let's start this again. Actually, yeah. So let me put so you hit the enter key and it's it's going to put all this stuff in there, right? So if actually you go in there and change that, right? If you change that, it'll get rid of this, okay? So you won't have all this stuff as well, right? It makes it a little cleaner. So to do that, you go to Tools, Options, go down to Debugging. It's just going down there because that's where I was. But Tools, Options, Debugging, and then on the right-hand side, go down and click Automatically Close the console when debugging stops, and hit OK. There might be some other scenarios where we don't want to do that, and we just go ahead and change it. But so let's test this again. So it should be good this time. Yep, and then you just hit the button again, and it just closes it, and you're done. So a little cleaner, and you don't have to worry about that. So we have this now, and so I'm going to go ahead and and this is what you want to do. And even if you're not done, even if you just if you're working on something and you stop, and you might not be coming back for a while. Things can happen. Sometimes people had hard drive crashes and stuff. You don't want to lose your work, right? So come back here, and then since we did that git ignore, we don't have all those other files in here. We just have these 4 here, right? And so here we just do commit lab2, hit commit, and then either push origin. And like I said earlier, I don't know, somebody I was working with yesterday, for some reason this screen wasn't even here, but you can also push origin up here as well. And there you go. And that updates your GitHub repository. We're done with that one. So the next one is going to be a little more challenging, I think. So write a console program. So what I want you guys to do on this is, kind of think of this stuff here can be a little bit confusing because you're wanting all these dashes and plus sign, kind of this table. And so don't really worry about that so much, but kind of look at this. I want to give you let's see, it's 11:11. At least, create one for lab 3. Create your project, your console project, just like we did. Write and just start work. Put some things down. Create your base class there, right? Your main method, and define a %raise constant. Okay, and just think through this. Maybe sometimes what you can do. I probably should have done it. Is you can put some comments in there that you can cut and paste some of the stuff out of here and just put this and make this comments in your code, right? Make this comments in your code so you don't have to keep coming back to this lab, right? So, just grab this and copy this and put this in your code and just comment it out, right? Put 2 forward slashes between each, before each line. So then you can have that there. You don't have to worry about keep on coming back here. But just kind of, why don't you go ahead and spend a little bit of time here till about 11:30. till about 11:30. Go ahead and so little less than 20 minutes. Just drop this in your code. Think about how you wanted to create this, and we'll go from there. Okay. Okay. I hope thought through it a little bit, figured out how you wanted to do it. So here's a solution that works. The table's not perfect, and actually, I think I have 3 years instead of 2 years. Okay. So either way, it's fine. It says 2 years. 2 years is fine. This one has 3 years. So basically, what we have here is have a double percent raise. Maybe we actually should. Fix this up a little bit. So here's our double raise, and this could be technically really should be, you probably should be a const there, right? Because you're not changing that, right? That's a constant. Then basically, just like we've done on these other ones, we're reading lines, we're asking questions and reading lines, right? We're doing that for the name. We're doing that for the name and for the salary. First name, then salary, then name, then salary. And then after we get all of our data, then we're taking, we have a variable first year, and we're taking our salary, and we're adding the salary times the percent raise, right? And then yep. So salary 1, 2, 3 times the percent raise, and then for the second year here, yep. Take our first year. So our first year's already got our raise, and then we add more to that, right? So we take that, and so then we're updating it to more, right? In this table here, this isn't going to necessarily come out exactly for you. You can, if you spend a lot of work on this, it can. There are ways to do it, but this one's not probably going to work that way. So, yeah. So here we'll go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. So enter that happens to be a lot on this. Oh, something went wrong there. Input like Joe was not in the correct format. Oh, that's interesting. Let's do this again. Just to put in first names. Oh, salary. I didn't put in the salary. I was doing that wrong. Yeah, so that's the error you should get. Let me close this and start over. I was putting in so in the future we're gonna build in logic so that you don't put alphanumeric characters, letters, and stuff like that, names in what should be a numeric field, right? So let's try this again and see if. So we got Tim Jones. I hate that always happens to me. So we got Tim Jones. And then we got put salary, say 400,000. That's a good salary. Yep, 400,000. And then here, let's do Mike Smith. Let's give him 600,000. And then let's do that, and then that's 700,000. All right, hit enter. Our thing's not perfect here. It don't need to be perfect, but you know, everything looks like it worked right as far as the equations are concerned. Start at 400, then 416, 432. There's Mike, there's Tom. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. So if you want to make a screenshot of this code, you can do that. Or if you just want to come back to this video, you know, be at the end of the video. I'll have the video out there within a couple hours, so you can either look at it at the end of the video later on, or if you just want to take a screenshot of this to help you out with the code, you can do that. So, and then the next one, I'm going to let you guys finish, think through that on what you want to do with that lab, the last one in the list on the assignments, on the lab assignments. So I'm going to let you do that one on your own, and contact me if you have any problems, any questions about it. Go ahead and contact me on that. And then, so, today's Wednesday, so both Thursday and Friday is lab day. So it's basically finish up. There's going to be some people who don't have their environment set up, don't have everything set up. So, obviously getting your environment set up is like the most important thing. I think most of you that join or join live have their environment set up, but have your environment set up. And then, work on your 2 written tests, and then this lab assignments, right? So that's kind of, that's the plan. And so